Hi guys, so today let's make a low poly tree, like a game asset that we could use in Unity 3D or Unreal or any mobile game. Um, in Maya, I'm here in Maya 2016. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on a cube under polygons, and I'm going to kind of scale it on the Y, just kind of make it a little longer. And I'm going to go ahead and add some height segments. So maybe do something like, maybe like 12. Seems like a good number. I'm going to press spacebar and go into my all quad view here. And then in the side view, I'm going to take my move tool and just kind of move this up, make sure my tree is actually right on the ground here. All right. So go back into perspective view, again by just hovering over it and pressing spacebar. And now all I'm going to do at this point is just I'm going to grab my select tool, go into the face mode, and just kind of select where I would want the branches to be on each side. So maybe just kind of randomly clicking one on each side, something like that. And now I'm going to click on the extrude button and simply pull them out all at once. Maybe not too far. I don't want my branches to be too crazy. Now I'm going to grab my scale tool and just kind of scale them a little bit. And actually I'm going to grab my move tool, and I wouldn't mind if some of these were kind of pointing up. I think that looks more of a kind of a tree kind of thing. All right. So at this point we only have 66 faces, which is really nice and small, but obviously this is not interesting enough and just way too simplistic. So one of the tricks we could do is exit, go into object mode, and while the tree stem is selected, go to mesh and just simply say smooth. And once you do that, you have this little dial here. So I'm going to put mine on 1, and as I did that, you could see that it actually doesn't look like a tree at all. And part of the reason is because we need more edges on the very end here, on the end of the branch. So I'm actually going to Control Z my way out of here. And while this is selected, I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, click Insert Edge Loop. I'm going to go into Options and make sure the relative distance from edge is on. So it's the top one. So then I can just simply click on the edge here and just kind of add a little edge loop. And this will kind of hold the shape a little better once I smooth my tree. So something like that. Go back into object mode. And if we wanted to, we can also turn on this little button, which allows us to see the topology a little better. Okay, so let's close this and let's try this one more time. I'm going to say smooth. Make sure it's selected, smooth it. And division 1. So now I think it's a little better. It's holding the shape a little better. And if we wanted to, we can of course tweak it as well. But if you did want to tweak it, I mean, it's fine, but if you did want to tweak it, all you need to do is grab, like, let's go into edge mode and maybe grab these two guys here. And let's see, go to my move tool and maybe turn on soft select, turn this down to like 0.5, maybe even 1. Let's try 1. And just push this up. And that's nice because it also might deform it a little, so it kind of gives it not so perfect view, you know, not so perfect shape, which I think is really cool. So let's do the same thing here. maybe take these edges here and just kind of push them down. And let's do the same thing here. Now there's like probably 1,000 different ways to make a tree, but I'm just showing you one way how I would approach it. But this is definitely not the only way. So we can even go into vortex mode and just kind of move these around any way we like. So this looks like a tree to me. Maybe go back into the edge mode and just do this up here too. Just kind of move it down a little bit. And if you double click, it kind of it selects the whole loop. So, all right, so that looks pretty good. Next, let's create the like the leaves part. So to do that, I'm just gonna grab my sphere here, and of course it put it on the bottom. So I'm gonna bring this up, go into my polysphere and my attribute editor, and just turn this to like maybe like 7. Just keep it kind of low poly. And if we wanted to, of course, we can make it larger so it looks kind of like a, I suppose I'm making like a cartoon oak tree, low poly oak tree. So put that in the middle, and then let's make one for each branch here. But another thing we could do really quick to give it even more shape, if we wanted to, is grab our scale tool, go into vortex mode, and just select like the bottom of it, and then double click on the scale, and then turn the fall off real high for soft select. And then if you scale this up, maybe that's a little too high. Trying to find a sweet spot. So something like that. We can just scale it and deform it a little even more, so it's not so perfect. That would be one way of doing it. Another way we can deform it is actually select it and make sure that you're in the modeling tab. But if you go to deform, you can go to nonlinear and do like a flare. There we go. So it adds kind of these 2 rings. But then if you go in here in your attribute editor, you can actually play around with some of this stuff. So like you can do the curve and give it like different shapes. So maybe we can go like a 2 on Z and maybe 2 on X, and then kind of thicken the bottom part. I think that looks really cool. And now if we wanted to get rid of this because we're done with it, we can go to under edit, we can say delete by type history. And if you just click it, it kind of bakes in your deformations into the shape, and essentially the shape becomes, you know, this final version, which is really nice. All right, so we I think that looks pretty cool. If you if you think that some of this geometry is still too dense, you could actually individually go into edge mode. Let's turn off our soft selection. You can actually individually get rid of some of this geometry. So like if I double click on this, it selects the whole row. So then if I hold down the control key and press delete, it will actually delete the whole edge loop. And I think it's still retaining some of the shape. So if you wanted to, you can manually clean this up. So it's up to you. Right now I'm at 345 faces and 683 edges. So I still think it's pretty low, but you could clean this up a little if you wanted to. Maybe let's delete this guy. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to go under mesh and actually clicking on reduce options box here. You can actually say reduce, and then you can drag this percentage slider, and it will actually reduce it based on, you know, what percentage you set. So that would be another way. But then, as you could see, the higher the percentage, it's essentially deleting all of your shape. So the lower the percentage, the more shape it's retaining, but then you have higher polygons. But this is cool for like more of a complex model. I don't really need to do that. I'm just trying to show you a couple different ways you can keep your geometry nice and low poly. Alright, so let's go ahead and duplicate this guy. So to do that, I can actually go into like the side view here, and I'm going to select it and then press Command D for duplicate, and let's just rotate it, maybe make it a little smaller. This guy, I suppose, should be a little larger. Do Command D again. Now keep in mind I'm on the Mac. On the PC, I guess it would be Control D. So there you have it. And I think we have one more. Let's do it from this view. And if I press A, it kind of centers in. I guess I have two more. So that's a cool little trick. If it's too far, press A and you kind of zoom in. So again, Command D, scale it, rotate it. Now the outer ring here is the camera view. So I'm just grabbing the outer one. The ones in the center, the rings in the center, those represent the object rotation axis. So keep that in mind. So the outer one is actually the one that's facing the camera. Alright, so I'm going to do Command D one more time. Put this guy on this side. And here's our tree. Now one thing we could do is obviously maybe make them a little more appealing. So this would be larger. I don't want them touching, but this could be a little larger. A little fuller, but this looks like a low poly tree to me. Of course you can make any variation that you want, but so this tree right here is 533 polygons, about 1,000 edges. I think that's really cool. If you wanted to, you could actually combine all of it. So select it and click this little button here, combine. Now it's combined. And let's go ahead and clean the history on it. So I'll go to delete by type history. So now we deleted any history on it. So the next thing would be just quickly maybe texturing it. So, you know, this could just be brown and all the leaves should be green. So maybe let's go ahead and do that real fast. So I'm going to select my tree, and the next step would be to do the UVs for this tree. So to do the UVs, I'm going to click on this little button called UV Editor. And as you can see right now, it's just one big mess. You can't quite tell where the leaves are or where the stem is, right? So you can't possibly paint this. So what you're going to do is right click and go to Faces and just kind of select the bottom part of this tree. Then holding down the Shift and the dot or period key, you can grow your selection all the way up. Just click it enough until you think it's done. If you're not sure, you can click this little button called X-ray and you can see your selection. Alright, so once you selected the entire trunk of the tree, you can decide from what side you want to project your UV map from. I'm looking at this X view, so I'm going to shoot mine from this way. So then I'm gonna go to UVs, go to planar here, go to options, and I want to select the X because I want to shoot it from the X. All right, or project it. I'm not shooting anyone, I'm just projecting. Okay, so I'm gonna say apply, and now as you can see, if I grab this guy, here's my tree. So now it will be a lot easier to paint it because it's actually away and separate. And just like in this viewport, these are just scaling, so you could scale it any way you like. I'm gonna click on this little button and kind of just move it, leave it alone. Now obviously we do know that all of these are leaves, but if we could just leave them just like this because we don't really need to. We're not going to paint individual leaves or anything, so we could leave it just like this. Or if you wanted to, you could project it and just have a bunch of spheres, you know, from any one of these directions. I'm fine with just leaving it, so I'm going to press R and just kind of scale it. Press W to move it, and just move it kind of to the side here. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab this guy, just kind of put him in place. Oops, press W to move him back. If you press W, it will let you temporarily kind of overlap this. Even though they're overlapping, it's letting me. And I'm going to press R to scale it. Press W again to move it down. So here's my really fast but very clean looking UVs. Okay. So now we are ready to bring this into like Photoshop and maybe paint this. Now if you try to move this, you'll see that there's actually many of them, so that's not going to be easy to do. But if you grab the selection tool on the left and try to use that, and then press W, you can see that you can actually select all of them, which is really cool. If you ever want to move more than one shape that's overlapping, just make sure you select the W. This kind of selects just the individual shell. And also keep in mind you have these other different tools. You can cut UVs, you can unwrap them and unfold them, and you have all these cool things. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is just really simple, so I don't need to do anything more than this. But if you did want to, let's say, unfold this, right, you could select the edge of it, and then use the cutting tool to cut it, and then use the unfolding tool to unfold it. So it'll just unfold it like a candy wrapper. If you had like something like a car or airplane, but again, we don't really need to do that. So all I'm going to do now is just grab my selection tool, select all of these, go to polygons, go to UV snapshot, and now you just have to decide how big do you want your UVs to be. So mine is just going to be 1K, just for the sake of this example. So I'm going to go to my desktop, make a new folder, and just call it tree. I'll say tree example. Create, and I'll call this UV. All right, and next I'm just going to say OK. So now I just exported my UVs to a file. So now if I go to something like Photoshop, I can open that file. And now here's my 1K UVs, and of course if you check your size you could see that it's 1K. So at this point all we need to do really is just set the colors for this. So one thing that I usually like to just double click on this to unlock it, then put another layer underneath my UVs, and now if you just temporarily color the bottom of it, you'll be able to do like a multiply or screen, just so you could see the color through it, and use kind of UVs as the guide, right? So now let's say we'll decide what color our leaves are going to be. So I'm thinking just kind of a generic green. And for the stem, Tree stem, I just want like a, you know, like a wood dark brown. So let's do that. So something like that maybe. Yeah, something like that should work. All right, so now I'm gonna turn off my UVs, and actually we can, if we wanted to, we could actually call them UV guide, which is nice because if you ever want to come back, you know where UVs are. And now if we save this, let's save this as a JPEG and just call it texture. Oh, I also suggest saving the PSD version again, just in case you need to come back and make any tweaks. But now if you go back into Maya, we no longer need this. But I can go to object mode. Let's get exit the X-ray mode, and if we wanted to, we could actually just go ahead and assign something like a Blinn or a Lambert. Let's just do a Lambert. So I'm going to click on it and go to color, click file, click the folder, and then grab my texture JPG file that we just made, say open. And now if I turn on my textures with this button, you could see that voila, here's our tree. So now this guy is ready to rock and roll, and you can bring him into any gaming package this would be perfect for. So to export it, just go File, Export Selection, and do like a FBX or something. So tree FBX is the perfect extension. All right, so export, and there you go. All right, so here's our tree, and I hope you guys enjoyed this.